We made it. The first live edition of Benny and the Bets. What is good, people? Ben Heisler, my guy, Stanford Joe Summers, who you should be following on Twitter, on X, across the social media platforms at I am Joe Summers. On the show today, we are, of course, presented by PXG. Make sure you guys check out PXG over in their store in Overland Park, or check them out as well. Perfect opportunity. It's Black Friday today. So check them out, pxg.com. I will tell you on today's show, there is a plethora of opportunities to get into. We have Chiefs Raiders bets. We have bets from all the different local college games over the course of a big weekend. Stanford Joe has got some of his favorite bets for the NFL slate this week. Like, Joe, you're the perfect person to have on today because there's such a good blend of local, of national, of Chiefs Raiders, and this is all right up your style. And by the way, if you're not reading out and checking out Joe's work over on the Fansided Network and on BetSided, make sure you guys check that out as well. So first of all, happy belated Thanksgiving, big guy. It's good to see you.
Happy Thanksgiving. I hope everything went wonderful for you and the family yesterday. Ready to make some money for this Cyber Monday and Black Friday sales we got going on. It's an exciting slate across the board. NFL, we got college. It's going to be a good weekend. I'm fired up, and I hope that you and the family had a wonderful Thanksgiving.
We really did, man. We feel very, very fortunate to have everybody all together. The boys had themselves a good time. They didn't get to bed until about 9:30. But before we do that, and I hope this doesn't bring back some things. So Joe's got this awesome picture behind him. You see that, right? Of Mahomes and Kelsey, and then also another one right there. Really cool story about Joe. It was maybe right around a year or so ago.
Yeah, it's Christmas.
Joe's dad was a wonderful artist, like just incredibly talented artist that he picked up a little bit later on in his life, and he put this together. It was Kelsey doing the dunk, and I remember he posted it on Twitter. And I was like, "That looks amazing! Like, how can I buy a copy of it?" And like 2 weeks later, he drove by my house and was like, "This is for my dad. Like, this is for you." So I have it in my office hanging up right over on the side. Just makes me happy every time that I'm able to take a look and have something this cool hanging up over in the center where we're doing shows, dude. So I appreciate you and your family.
Hey, I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, my dad at the time, it was actually really cool that he was painting. He had brain cancer. He passed away the week before the Super Bowl last year, but he saw your tweets about the art, and he loved that you were appreciative of it. So we wanted to make you something special while he still had some function. So I cherish his artwork. I think it's really, really cool for you to bring that up. It's a weird holiday season, first one without him, but it's neat that his artwork and everything can kind of live on, and you can feel the warm holiday spirit. So I appreciate you bringing that up, man.
Absolutely, man. So I'm glad that we're able to have that all together for us right now. So where do we go? Like, it's been kind of a remarkable start to the NFL season. I guess before we dive into Chiefs Raiders and some of our favorite plays for the week, we've been talking a lot about trends on the show. We've been talking a lot about overs, or talking a lot about unders over the course of the year. Of course, last night, pretty much all the overs hit. I had under 43.5 in that game between the 49ers and the Seahawks. Are you going to continue to ride that wave with unders the rest of the way? Do you envision that the books are starting to turn tables? Like, give me kind of your overall assessments of what you've taken away so far in the NFL season.
Well, it really seems like the books have adjusted the odds a little bit. Like the over and unders have steadily been creeping down. And even today we got Miami and the Jets, and that's sitting at 40.5 right now, juiced to the under. It's funny that you say maybe ride the over train, because my favorite bet for the Chiefs game happens to go directly against that trend. But it really seems like sports books have started to adjust to that trend and are bringing the numbers down, which, as we've seen over the course of the last couple of days, kind of lends itself to a good over bet. Moving forward, though, I think that if you have a team with an incredible defense and an inexperienced quarterback, which seems to be a lot of the matchups we've got going on in the near future, I still like the unders. Though particularly Live unders seem to have been hitting at a really high clip. If someone goes out and has a first or second drive touchdown, the under in the live spot has been really beneficial, and that's going to be something I look to attack this weekend as well.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because that was a key part of what turned my Thursday into a slightly profitable Thursday as opposed to a slightly losing Thursday. I attacked the live under in Green Bay and Detroit twice. Because you just know that the Packers offense statistically over the course of the year, and yes, Jordan Love is playing better and they're starting to get everybody going. But I mean, at one point we saw this game closed at 46 and a half. Within the first 7-8 minutes, we saw a live line at 56 and a half to 57, which we grabbed the live under on. And then after that turnover, where it was a fumble recovery for Green Bay, it got up to 66 and a half. Like, we're talking about a near 20 different difference in the total. So Joe brings up a really good point, is that a lot of these live unders, especially with these scripted drives at the beginning of the game, where teams tend to be a little bit more successful offensively, it is a great time to target a live under. So let's dive in with Chiefs and Raiders. It's a weird line in the sense that we're still trying to figure out how to identify and how to attack this Chiefs team when it comes to betting them this year. Look at the live odds, 8.5 as we start today's show. Chiefs a road favorite in Las Vegas. According to the latest splits over at DraftKings and VSiN, 62% of the bets are on Kansas City, but only 45% of the money is on the Chiefs. It's also a low total in this game too, Joe. And again, another split between the public and the sharps. 52% of the bets are on the over for Kansas City at only 42.5, but 83% of the money is on the under for this game. I look at this game initially and say to myself, I think this is a perfect spot for a teaser with the Chiefs.
Yes.
Get it between 7 and 3. You can move that 8.5 down to 2.5. I'm kicking myself a little bit because I had a chance to bring it down from 8. And while the Raiders have been much better at home and have been much more competitive under Antonio Pierce, the numbers for Pat Mahomes, he doesn't lose these games, especially in back-to-back scenarios. Like, it just doesn't happen throughout the course of time. I'm trying to pull up some of these numbers for Mahomes. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. According to Evan Abrams, he has 27 passes dropped. And this is most of any quarterback in the NFL. There's also a scenario for him where he's 30-2 straight up in November and December in his last 32 games. So you get that number down to 2.5. It also goes in line with his numbers as a 2.5 point favorite for an underdog, which is nearly impossible to beat. 28-7 straight up is a road or neutral favorite of 3 points or more. So tell me, I guess, your initial thoughts on this game and how you're looking to attack it.
Well, so first, I love that you brought up that the Raiders have been really good at home, because the Raiders, they've been terrible against the spread on the road, but at home, they've covered in 4 straight, which, just look at that at first glance, you think, okay, maybe the Raiders have some value there. However, those 4 wins, or 4 covers rather, came against the Jets, the Giants, the Patriots, and the Packers. And with respect to all those teams, I've got a lot more faith in the Chiefs. So I love to see the number at 8.5. The opening odds a week ago were 9.5. So even though we missed the 8, to still get that point of value, I like a lot.
No doubt.
Because frankly, I don't see how this Raiders team with Aiden O'Connell is supposed to score, barring some kind of crazy turnover luck. Like, the under has hit in 6 consecutive Chiefs games. It's 8-1 in the Raiders' last 9. This is just not a good offense. In respect to Antonio Pierce, they're playing harder under him. Max Crosby's having a fantastic season. But this is a game that, for me, the Chiefs defense is going to dominate. And if I am Andy Reid and Matt Nagy, I'm leaning heavily into Isaiah Pacheco. We know that the Chiefs offense isn't that effective through the air right now, but Pacheco is among the league leaders in both yards before contact per carry and broken tackles per carry. The Raiders are 27th in opponent yards per rush attempt at 4.5 per attempt. So I see the way that I would play it is a heavy dose of Pacheco, which lends itself to some props that I'm sure we'll talk about. lean on that defense, punish Aiden O'Connell, who I don't think has a prayer in the world against Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, L'Jarius Sneed, Trip McDuffie and company. And so I think that we're going to have sustained long drives, keep that total under, and I don't think the Raiders get to 10 points. So I see this as like a 23-6 type of game with the Chiefs winning with a healthy dose of Pacheco, but going under the total. My favorite bet for the game is that under 43. And if you tease the under 49 with that Chiefs -2.5, then you're really cooking with some gas.
Yeah. All right. So normally I don't always love the idea of teasing the line and the total, but if you're making it a part of, like, say, a same game parlay, then I think it's a different conversation. And you're also clearing a pretty key number with 47 in that process as well. So I'm really intrigued by that. Yeah, 43 is certainly a tempting number to be able to jump on. I will tell you this. Evan Abrams brought this up when he was on the show a few weeks ago. So we've talked about the Chiefs' inability to score, I think, last 3 games, 0 points in the second half.
Dead last in second half scoring, 5.3 per game, I believe. Might be 5.5, one of the two. It's bad.
The Chiefs are also 10-0 to second half unders and 10-0 to fourth quarter unders. So let's say you think that all of a sudden the offense is ready to break out. Maybe instead of going to the fourth quarter of the second half under, you just take the Raiders team total under.
I love that.
In the second half as well, and just say, we've seen what this defense is capable of. We know, especially in these types of spots, that O'Connell likely is going to be having to throw. Why not go ahead and just balance it, put our trust in Kansas City's defense, and that way, if the offense does go off, you know what I mean? Like, especially for Chiefs fans, the idea of rooting for your team not to score points in the second half when you've had an issue scoring points, to me, it almost feels counterintuitive. Why not just put that trust in an area that has been so good and so consistent all year? Now, again, if the Chiefs are winning at halftime or they're winning big, all the more reason to trust that second half under as well collectively. But I think that's probably going to be my play along with teasing Kansas City. And I think between, we talked about this actually. We were together at the Hall of Fame Classic. There's a couple different games if you want to go the teaser route outside of doing it as a same game parlay that you can consider. For example, I think a really intriguing play to consider in this particular matchup would be Cleveland. You and I talked about Cleveland as a possibility here to move that from +1.5 to +7.5. If you want to consider, there's another game, maybe Arizona,
the Texans as well.
Texans as well. That's I'm sorry, that was the other one. Texans. +1.5 down to up to +7.5 would probably be the two that I would recommend this week as well. All right. So you talked about Isaiah Pacheco. The number for him, as I'm pulling up some of his plays over the course of this upcoming week. If they give him the ball, and that's always kind of the big question, because he's going to produce. I'm looking at rush attempts, which is currently sitting at 14.5. Rushing yards, it feels a little bit high, just given the fact that you just don't know how often they're going to give him the ball. But 65.5 is pretty much the consensus number right now on the board. So you're looking at Pacheco. Are you looking at him for rushing yards? Are you looking at him for rush attempts, rush and receiving touchdowns? Where are you looking specifically for Pacheco?
So what I've locked in is the rushing yards and then anytime touchdown. And again, it's been honestly my biggest frustration with Reed and Nagy all season is the lack of reliance on Pacheco. So I thought this Monday night, even in a loss, even against maybe the best rush defense in the league, for him to have 19 carries, his highest mark of the season, was really encouraging to me, because it seems like it's kind of indicating that they're going to start going in that direction of leaning on him. But even then, Mahomes had 43 pass attempts, and that discrepancy needs to come down a lot and be a lot more even for me to feel more comfortable about our Super Bowl chances long term. But this matchup just makes too much sense to lean on Pacheco. Max Crosby is a beast. That the Raiders defense has been playing pretty well at home, even against bad offenses, and that Pacheco is really, really good. So I want to see him at least 15 carries. I don't fully trust Nagy and Reed to do that, so I'm staying away from the rush attempts and focusing instead on the rushing yards, because we saw even against the Eagles, he can bust out a 15, 18-yard carry at any point. And the Raiders' run defense has been so bad this year, coupled with a really effective pass rush, that it just makes too much sense to me not to give him the ball. So I think that the offensive player of the game, so to speak, is going to be Pacheco. So I've locked in that over 65.5. I've locked in anytime touchdown score. And I think that it correlates really well with that underplay, because if we lean on Pacheco, then we're going to drain the clock. We have the longest average time of possession per game we've had during Mahomes' entire career. He's got the lowest yards per attempt average of his career. So we've been leaning into those shorter, sustained drives, and hopefully we'll be able to find some success through the ground. I'm a little bit concerned that they might come out throwing the ball a lot early. But if it doesn't work, which not a ton over the last several weeks has indicated that it will work, then you can start going to Pacheco. So I am fully comfortable with taking his overs and expect the Chiefs to lean on him in the game.
I'm good with that play as well. There was a play that I was on last week that was pretty much set on hitting until late in the fourth quarter. And that was because the Chiefs needed to try and attempt to come back. And that was Patrick Mahomes' pass attempts. We were looking at, I think, 37.5, 38.5 last week. The number is still the same this week. I think he entered the fourth quarter with maybe 30, 31 pass attempts. And then, of course, had another 13, 14 down the stretch because they were playing from behind. If you believe that it's going to be the opposite effect this week against the Raiders, I think that's another well that I'm going to go back to and take the under on Pat Mahomes' pass attempts. Right now, I'm seeing it at 38.5, minus 115. If you shop around and really want to roll the dice a little bit, you can get it at plus odds at 37.5. But I think the number is reasonable, and I like it more at 38.5 this week as well. Also, another play that I was on last week didn't end up coming into fruition, but I do think is in play again this week, is a Noah Gray anytime touchdown. Seeing his number at 9-1 available this week. Gray is still getting in on the snap counts. They're still using a little bit more 12 personnel. Obviously Kelsey caught the touchdown last week, but Joe, there's so much attention paid to him that the Chiefs are comfortable rolling out Gray and targeting him in the red zone. Yeah, the first look is going to be Kelsey, but Mahomes has shown no favoritism necessarily in going to a different tight end, especially if it's an open one. And Gray has gotten himself open this year.
He has, and he's had a couple, I forget which game it was, but there was a drop that he had in the red zone. Mahomes missed him on another one. So they've shown a propensity to target him in the red zone. And especially, Travis Kelce is the Raiders killer. Those guys remember the 4 touchdown game that he had against them. I expect them to bracket him in the red zone, and I expect Gray to have at least one opportunity. So at 9-1 odds, I honestly don't mind that at all. So fingers crossed on that front, especially the last few weeks have been a little iffy for Kelce. So if they're looking to get some fresh legs in there, especially if he's bracketed in the end zone, I think it makes a lot of sense.
All right. Here's the one that we'll get to and that I need your perspective on, because I need a neutral perspective here. And then coming up on the other side, Joe and I will get into some more best bets for the rest of the NFL slate. We will also dive into the local college plays for college football over the course of this Thanksgiving weekend. The numbers are not released yet for a guy that just absolutely tortured me last week. If you heard the show, watched the show, Adam Rosenberg was our guest. And we talked about the longest reception yards for Marquez Valdes-Scantling. We also talked about anytime touchdown odds. We talked about the alternate line for his receiving yards, because you always know that MVS is going to find an opportunity to make a big play. The question is whether or not he comes down with it. And we even said on this show, it is very likely that you will watch him in real time cost you your bet. So that's exactly what happened. It was the first time, Joe, and I've told you this already, so I apologize that you've heard the bit.
Oh, no, go right ahead.
It's the first time in my life that I've suffered 3 bad beats on one play of a game, with the longest reception at 12.5, with the alternate line of 39.5, and then also for an anytime touchdown. So MVS cost me a bunch of money with that drop in the game. There's a part of me, given how much they've talked about him this week and how he does so many other things to, be there for the team, and he's excellent in the blocking game. There's a bit of a squeaky wheel element that I feel this week. Like, I think they're going to give him another chance to redeem himself. And I don't think anyone's going to want to bet him because of how they got destroyed last week. So when those numbers are out, say it's 11.5 for longest reception, say it's 350 to 1 for an anytime touchdown. I think I gotta, just add some more self-inflicted wounds here. I think I have to go back to the well, and then if he doesn't cash this week, then he's dead to me the rest of the year.
I've had like the last 5 weeks with MVS outside of the Chargers game where I felt the same way. And this is my little violin because we're pouring out some tears for you, not only for missing that prop, but also to represent MVS's production. It's been very small this season, but he's still the 6th highest paid player on the team this year. They're going to keep going after him, and all he needs to do is make one catch. So if those are the numbers that we're seeing, I support it. And I'm sorry that it didn't work out too hot for you last week, but the Raiders defense is one that you could certainly exploit. And I imagine that if we were leaning heavily on Pacheco, that's going to set up a play action deep shot for either MVS or Watson. So it all fits that same game script. Real quick, if you don't mind, I wanted to hit two quick props before we break.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so first, another line that we don't have yet, but something that I have been putting out every single week on KC King that I write for and on the Arrowhead Betting Show. The Mahomes rushing over has hit in every game but the Minnesota Vikings game. We don't have the line yet, but if it's somewhere around 26 yards or so, I'm taking that over. And we'd be remiss to mention, particularly given the Raiders' defensive scheme, my guy, Rashee Rice, 38.5 receiving yards over at FanDuel right now. The Raiders run zone coverage, according to Pro Football Focus, just under 80% of the time. It's a top 10 rate across the league. And Rashee Rice eats zone coverage. 378 of his 420 receiving yards have come against zone. He's cleared 38.5 receiving yards in 4 of his last 5 games. I expect us to get him more involved over the course of the season. So given the Raiders' defensive tendencies and his success against zone, Rashee Rice over 38.5 is another one I'm adding to the card.
I love that play. I like it a little bit more than his receptions total, which is currently at 30 or at 3.5. And that's heavily juiced to the under. But with the 38.5 right now, you can still get pretty good value on that. So really good stuff on the Rashee Rice play as well. Joe Summers is with us. He, of course, of the Fanside and Betside Network. And as you mentioned, you can catch him on a variety of podcasts and shows as well. Just to make sure that I got them all correct, Joe, lay out all the different places that people can find you.
So the Fansided, Bet-Sided Network, kckingdom.com. I've been doing a ton of work on and running that. The Arrowhead Addict, both pregame, postgame, and halftime Chiefs coverage, and a weekly Friday betting show. So kind of sprinkled all over the place. But KC Kingdom is where I post all my betting previews every week. So definitely check that out. My Chiefs Raiders will be coming up this afternoon.
Awesome. Good stuff. Joe Summers is with us. Going to take a quick break, be back on the other side with our best bets for week 12 in the National Football League, as well as get you our thoughts on KU, K-State, and Mizzou, all in action this weekend in a big weekend of college football. It is a live edition. Benny and the Bets presented by PXG. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Joe Summers is with us here on Benny and the Bets. We will go through our favorite bets of all the different local college sides. There's some props, there's some sides, there's some totals that we can consider as well. Mizzou, of course, in action today. Then you got KU and K-State in action on Saturday for college football. Big game between Michigan and Ohio State, obviously, as well. But let's continue on right here with some of our favorite plays and bets for the rest of the NFL slate. And Joe, I'm going to tee you up on this one because there is a matchup where we haven't seen the Tennessee Titans be favorites for a while. But now you look at the slate this week, 3.5. So with the hook, currently at home against a Carolina Panthers team that feels to be in a bit of just a disaster right now. And you like Tennessee even with the hook. Why is that?
I do. So this is a gross spot. And I looked at it and I made like a stink face. But it is a great situational play for Tennessee. So the only team over the course of the entire season that covered the spread after playing the Cowboys the following week after playing the Cowboys was the Giants when they beat the Commanders last week. Before that game, every single team that had played the Cowboys failed to cover the spread the following week. The Panthers just played the Cowboys. That physicality of the defense and the offensive line and all of that, makes it tough to bounce back the next week. So the idea first is a situational spot after facing the Cowboys. And then second, that it does look gross because you see that hook, that 3.5, and you say, oh man, oh no, this has got to be a Panthers spot. That makes me feel like odds makers want us to take the Panthers. I think Derrick Henry will be in for a big game. I think Hopkins is going to get loose for a deep touchdown. I don't have a ton of faith in Will Levis, but I do have a lot of faith in Mike Vrabel and his ability to coach up a defense, especially against a rookie quarterback. So in this spot, I am going to hold my nose real tight and take the Titans minus 3.5. What are your thoughts on it? I know it's a gross one.
Yeah, I mean, initially when I saw the hook, I was tempted to take Carolina, but the numbers for them, especially on the road, have been abysmal.
Mm-hmm.
So have not won a game straight up on the road. They're 0-5, 1-4 against the spread. They have failed to cover by an average of 6.2 points per game, and they're losing these games on the road by nearly 2 touchdowns. They're just atrocious in this spot, and also Frank Reich, not a good coach as a dog. 12-31 straight up in his career. Conversely, you have Mike Vrabel, who has historically coached up his teams, like you said, in these spots where they are going to play in close games. Like, this just feels like you give the ball to Derrick Henry like 100 times and just say, run through a brick wall, my friend. Carolina's got all sorts of issues right now. Can't trust them. Thielen, I could see Adam Thielen having another really nice day where he gets like 9 receptions for like 89 yards, maybe sneaks in. I mean, that's a guy that, continues to defy his age, defy some expectations there. So maybe I'll look at the prop side for Adam Thielen. Tommy Tremble continues to be an anytime touchdown machine as like their backup tight end. So that might be another area that I consider. But bet-wise, I think you consider the hook for Tennessee because I could just see them, especially if it's close in the first half, them just relying heavily on Henry and Carolina not being able to stop him.
Yeah, it feels to me like one of those games. Like I think Thielen will get some nice stats, and then it's going to be tight in the second half, and then we're going to get a late Derrick Henry touchdown or something like that just makes the 7-point lead, and then Bryce Young isn't able to lead the game-winning drive. That's kind of how I see this going to earn us a sweaty cover.
Yes, very much so. And boy, if you're Carolina, especially for me as a Bears fan, knowing that Chicago gets that draft pick, can you imagine if they would have taken Stroud instead? There was actually a report, I think that came out a week or so ago, where they were going to the Bears were going to trade, I think, with Houston instead, and then somehow Carolina was going to either get the second pick or maybe Carolina was going to trade with Houston, and then Houston was going to trade with the Bears. Very, very different worlds that could have gone down in that particular spot, but certainly not the case here. Another short dog on the road, or excuse me, another short favorite on the road that you like this week. Pulling up the latest odds here, you have the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road at Cincinnati. This one you're going to want to shop around for, but again, I would encourage you to check it out over at DraftKings. The line right now is certainly the most favorable there for Steelers at -1.5. I've already seen this move to 2. Some even have it at 2.5 for the Steelers as well. Obviously, Burrow done for the rest of the year. Cincinnati's still dealing with some injuries, but very advantageous spot for Pittsburgh, even in a divisional game, even on the road, even with all their offensive issues. Are you buying into the Matt Canada change as coordinator as really being able to possibly spark this offense? And if so, is there value on maybe Pittsburgh's team total as well?
I do think that the change from Matt Canada is going to pay dividends. This honestly is a big leap of faith in TJ Watt to be able to smother Jake Browning. Look, frankly, I think that Mike Tomlin and this defense are going to destroy Jake Browning and what Zach Taylor has tried to do. So much, in my opinion, on the Bengals over the last several seasons has been kind of dependent on the idea that Zach Taylor does not put his offense in a great position to succeed. He calls a lot of questionable play calls, the game situation, the times that he runs halfback dive up the middle with Joe Mixon for 1 yard. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So now that he doesn't have Joe Burrow to improvise and make magic happen in the pocket with all those subtle little movements that he can do to avoid pressure, now that he doesn't have that, I think there's going to be an adjustment period for the Bengals. It's unfortunate for them that they have to face one of the most ferocious defenses in the NFL this week. The way that you have beaten the Steelers over the course of the season has been with really deep deep shots in the passing game because their secondary has been a little bit vulnerable. I don't think Jake Browning can do that. And so the way that they're going to be forced to play, I think plays right into Mike Tomlin and the Steelers defense's hands. And there's also a statistical case to back up just the general vibes check as well. Like the Bengals have just essentially watched their season go down the drain. And so aside from the vibes check, if you take a look at the Steelers as favorites, let me get it pulled up here. Yeah, the Steelers as favorites are 6-2 against the spread in their last 8. They are 2-1 this season in this spot, but have covered each of the last 2. And their defense has performed really well in the spot. Whereas you look at Cincinnati, even with Joe Burrow, they've failed to cover the spread in 3 straight. The Jake Browning is fine for what he is, but he's not the guy that you want to take on TJ Watt in this pass rush. So to only have it at 1.5 points over at DraftKings, I love the spot for the Steelers. I don't have much faith in their offense and Kenny Pickett, but I've got enough faith in the defense and Mike Tomlin to be able, especially now they're leaning on Jaylen Warren. Just let Jaylen Warren carry the ball 15 times, and we're going to be all right. We're going to score enough.
Can I tell you my favorite bet in this game? Because I certainly am probably going to tail you on Pittsburgh at -1.5. Give me the under on Cincinnati's team total at 17.5.
Oh, it's at 17.5? I didn't even realize
17.5. That's it.
Sign me up. I'm in.
Yeah. A little bit juice to the under, but not terribly. This team's not scoring 17.5 in a divisional game. There's some rain expected in the forecast in Cincinnati this week. This does not set up well. This is going to be like maybe a 17-10 win for Pittsburgh, probably this week.
Exactly how I see it. Yes.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're on Steelers -1.5. We're on the under Bengals team total in this game at -17.5 as well. Also, you got a couple overs, couple anytime touchdown plays, including a running back just coming off injured reserve, which I was a little bit concerned about initially, but you make a fairly compelling point. Give me a couple plays for some more props as well as we head into week 12.
So we'll start there. Kyren Williams, Los Angeles Rams. I'm taking his over 65.5 rushing yards. I believe that is it. No, it's a DraftKings. DraftKings 63.5. Let me get my numbers right. Kyren Williams, 63.5 rushing yards over at DraftKings. He put up 150 plus against this same Cardinals team the last time you saw them. Yes, he's coming off the IR, but the Rams just released Darrell Henderson. Their backfield hasn't been that impressive. That move to me implies that they're okay and comfortable with leaning on Kyren Williams. And based on the production he had against his exact same defense earlier in the season, I love getting 63.5. So it is a play on the faith that they'll give him the ball enough to get there. But their personnel moves, at least to me, indicate that they're willing to do that. So given the Rams issues, you got Cooper Kupp injured. You've got questionable Matt Stafford with his injuries this year. It feels like the game that would set you up to lean on the running game with Kyren Williams. So I am taking his over there. Do you have any thoughts or a couple other props?
Yeah, I think the play with Kyren Williams, I actually didn't realize that Henderson had been released. I
had him on my fantasy team. I picked him up last week, felt like a genius. And now
that changes everything. Mm-hmm. Because, there's a few other options that you can consider, but Cooper Kupp dealing with a bit of an injury. Puka saw a little bit more coverage. When Stafford is able to get the ball out quick and Williams has shown his effectiveness as a receiver, his prop for receiving yards is actually fairly high. Looking at 20.5 over at DraftKings this week. So, combine that, he's looking at 87.5 rushing and receiving yards, coming right off the IR. Joe, I think your assessment is right. It tells me everything I need to know about how the Rams plan to use him, especially in a very advantageous matchup. That's a really, really intriguing play. I might wait a little bit just so I can see his snap count and see if I can get it a better number live. But all indications are that he's going to be the guy in the way in which the Rams used him in the early portion of the season. Kyren Williams was trending as like a RB1 in fantasy.
Oh, absolutely. He was excellent.
So, yeah, I think it's absolutely in play. And then if we're going back to that Jacksonville and Houston game as well, I know there's another prop that is intriguing for you, and a guy that I feel like I was a little bit too early on. But ever since I've started to not even fade, but just not play, he's just gone nuts. Another rookie to pair up with CJ Stroud this week.
This rookie class is awesome. You've got my guy Rashish. You've got Jordan Addison. Like, you've got some good rookie wide receivers. Maybe the most impressive of which is Nathaniel Tank Dell. Look, he has been taken over as the number one target in Houston's offense. He was rapidly increasing his first read target share at the beginning of the season before he got injured. And now just look at his last 3 games. He has 4 touchdowns, 8 catches for 149 yards and a tutty, 6 for 56 and a tutty, 6 for 114 and 2 tutties. He's facing an offense that we expect to be able to score in the Jaguars, so Houston's going to need to throw the ball. He's clearly C.J. Stroud's favorite target with respect to Nico Collins, but his props are sitting at 4.5 catches, 64.5 receiving yards, and plus 165 for a touchdown over at FanDuel. Tank Dell is the number one option in one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. If you just say props for the number one option in an explosive offense, and you just look across the board, you're going to be sitting around 80-ish yards or something like that. So to get him at 64.5, it really feels like we are getting in before the odds makers make an adjustment, because his target share, and especially first read target share, is ridiculous. The kid's impressive. He's clearly got a connection with CJ Stroud. So I'm all over Tank Dell props.
I'm gonna one up you there and say, I know that you found him at 64.5. DraftKings Sportsbook right now has him at 61.5 for the same exact odds. Go ahead, get on over to DK and go ahead and lock it in for Tank Dell. By the way, Joe, thankful that you're here. Thankful that we're being able to do the show. Thankful for all of you guys. Thankful to our producer, Nick. But really, there's so much to be thankful for. You got family, friends, food, NFL football all week long, and the best place that you can go to get your bets in action is over at, you guessed it, DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings is keeping your Thanksgiving week full of action, and new customers can bet just $5 on the NFL, and you can score 150 instantly in bonus bets. So no matter whether or not you're loading up on turkey, stuffing, some people like to go with a little lo mein on Thanksgiving. I don't judge. There's going to be something for you when it comes to your betting palette, whether it's money lines, parlays, props, live bets, which we've talked about here on the show, and so much more. You name it, they have got it. Of course, we've been talking all throughout the course of today's show about the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders. Right now at DraftKings Sportsbook, the Chiefs an 8.5-point favorite on the road in that game, with the total currently sitting at 42.5. So if you want to get in on the action this week, if you want to get in on all the local college football action that we're going to be talking about in just a second, download DraftKings Sportsbook, download the app now, use the code KCSN. And again, new customers can bet $5 on the NFL, score 150 instantly in bonus bets, only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the National Football League. Remember that code KCSN. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. If you have a gambling problem, call up. Try that again. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. I didn't know you'd still use www, but in this case, please make sure you type it in. Please play responsibly. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Just call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, you must be 21 or older in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gaming resources. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after they are issued. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms. All right. The NFL in the rearview mirror for this show. Let's now focus in on the college slate for today. Let's start with Mizzou. Opportunity once again to continue on this dream season. They are currently sitting at 54.5 over at DraftKings if you're looking on the total. And then for the spread, Tigers 9.5-point favorite on the road against Arkansas. Missouri has always felt to me this year that, they continue to win games. They'll cover when they need to. I feel like they've been a better underdog covering team than a favorite team. Mm-hmm. But in this particular case, it's hard to read on Arkansas. And again, this is a quote unquote rivalry game. And I'm curious if you think the line might be a little bit too strong this week.
It scares me a little bit for sure, though I do think that the opportunity that Mizzou has to clinch that New Year's Six bowl adds some extra motivation. Arkansas just 1-3 against the spread in the last 4, whereas Mizzou is 7-2 against the spread over the last 9. Obviously, like you mentioned, this number kind of accounts for that a little bit. My favorite play to attack this game, honestly, is Cody Schrader. I'm a diehard Jayhawks fan. My roommate went to Mizzou, and he's been telling me about this Cody Schrader kid alongside the thicker kicker, and he is a monster. You can get him at over 114.5 rushing yards over at FanDuel right now. I haven't checked DraftKings, so based on what you said before, that might be the spot to go. But Cody Schrader, his last several games, 148 rushing yards, 205 rushing yards, 112. 159. Like, this Mizzou offense clearly has an identity built around Cody Schrader, and I think that they're going to use him to attack Arkansas, especially given that this is a spot they can clinch the New Year's Six bowl. So if I'm leaning towards the side, I would take Mizzou just based on Arkansas's last month of struggles, but my favorite way to attack the game is Schrader.
Yeah, Schrader 114.5 for rushing yards over at DraftKings. That's pretty universal across the board. The thicker kicker is also a little bit interesting because if you bet Mizzou and you feel like they're going to win this game comfortably, I wonder if you might be able to find a decent field goals over on the thicker kicker as well.
Let's see. I would be interested in it. It feels like he's been the star of the season for Mizzou, aside from Schrader this last month. That kid is a beast, and then wherever he gets drafted, I'm going to be looking to get him on my fantasy team. He's a lot of fun to watch.
No doubt. Receiving yards, by the way, in case you're curious, you're actually going to get a really good value today on DraftKings relative to the rest of the books for Luther Burden. He's at 92.5. Juice to the over at -125, but looking around the rest of the market, DraftKings is the only spot that I'm seeing right now that has his receiving yards up. If you're looking at some of the offshore books, that number's been moved all the way up to 98.5. So Luther Burden over 92.5 might be the play this week, especially given what you said, Joe. Like, there is an opportunity both on the ground and through the air to attack Arkansas. But especially if you're just trying to get the best of the number, Burden 92.5, and he's continuing to show himself out as one of the most dominant receivers in the country.
Absolutely. And I mean, you look at the game, the only games basically that didn't clear this number, were against top 25 teams and excellent defenses. He didn't clear against Kentucky, he didn't clear against Tennessee, and he didn't clear against Georgia. Every single other team that Mizzou has played this year, Burden has at least 92.5 receiving yards, and in most cases, nearly double that. So Arkansas's defense is not at the level of a Georgia, Kentucky, or Tennessee. So I love that play as well. I'm right there with you. I think I'm going to lock that in after the show.
All right, let's move on. Kansas in action on the road this week against Cincinnati. Opportunity to take on their newest Big 12 rival, if you will. Line has been fluctuating either at 6.5 or 7. It has since moved over at DK to the Jayhawks as a 7-point favorite on the road. A lot of money coming in on KU via DraftKings as well as VSiN. 83% of the bets on KU, 90% of the handle. The big discrepancy, Joe, is on the total. 42% of the bets are on the over at 58, but 71% of the money coming in on the under for KU and Cincinnati this week. Do you have a play on this particular matchup?
So FanDuel has Kansas at 6.5 right now. It is juiced at -120, but you get under that key number of 7. So I'm taking Kansas at the 6.5. That's kind of a tough cutoff point for me. Depending on the prop numbers that are available, I love Devin Neal rushing over. The Cincinnati Bearcats defense hasn't been very good. I don't see it up yet on FanDuel. I have to check DraftKings, but Devin Neal anywhere around 80 to 85 rushing yards. I like the over there. Cincinnati is fine, but they're just 2-7 against the spread in their last 9 games. Kansas 3-1 against the spread in the last 4. They should have beat Kansas State. I'm biased as a Jayhawks fan, but I feel like we blew that one. We're a better team, and whether Jason Bean or whether Cole Ballard plays, I have a lot of confidence in this game. It's interesting that you mentioned the over-under because last season and entering this season, I overtrain on Kansas. A bad defense, an excellent offense, just always take the over. But actually, The under has hit in 3 consecutive games. Given the injuries we've dealt with the quarterback position, the relative lack of depth there, I do think the under is a safer play, so I agree with the sharps there, but Devin Neal is my favorite person to target in the matchup. If you can get the spread under 7, then I'm taking that as well.
Yeah, totally understand that play, especially with the key number there. Iowa State on the road at K-State to wrap up their regular season. 10-point favorites are the Wildcats this week, with the totals currently sitting at 46. The splits in this one are also fairly interesting. Lot more of the money is on Iowa State as a big dog at 54% of the money coming in compared to just 39% of the bets. The money is dead split on the total, which I found to be really interesting. And that's despite 73% of the betting tickets on the over. When you get Kansas State, Joe, as a favorite, more often than not, they have been one of the better covering teams. In fact, if you really go through Chris Kleiman's reign at K-State, the Wildcats have been one of the best covering teams in the country consistently. The 10 points scare me just because of Iowa State and how methodical they play and how good their defense is. But I just don't trust them to score. And so that's where I feel like you got to make that determination of 10 points does feel like a lot against a good defense, but Kansas State has shown that they can go ahead and take care of business as a double-digit favorite. So give me your perspective on this matchup.
No, I'm right there with you. I have full confidence in K-State this week. They're 5-1 against the spread in their last 6. Iowa State just 2-5 against the spread their last 7 as underdogs. Kansas beat this Iowa State team by 7, and Kansas State was obviously a big favorite over Kansas last week. I think Kansas State's a better team than my Jayhawks. So to get the spread under 10 or around 10, I'm comfortable with, especially given their issues scoring. And I mean, we're at the end of the season. K-State knows it needs to bolster its position in the Big 12 standings. It knows it needs to bolster its position for a bowl game. So I think that they will have pedal to the metal and not take it easy on them, so to speak. And so I'm going with K-State to continue. And I mean, you consider they're 3-1 in their last 4 as favorites, only not covering against Kansas. They covered as 21-point favorites over Baylor, 17.5-point favorites over Houston, shutting the Cougars out. Like, Kleiman will have his team ready, so I'm fully comfortable with K-State. And what I forgot to mention on Kansas, at 6.5 or 7, it's a perfect teaser piece as well if you want to tease them up with either of these other local teams.
Interesting. Yeah. And again, if you shop around a little bit, you can still find Kansas State at -9.5 as opposed to getting all the way up to 10. I'd also encourage you to consider, if you're looking at some alternative totals as well. I mentioned the line right now at 46 for the total. One book currently has it at 46.5. So if you're willing to pay a little bit more on the juice, bring it up to 47. That is a very key number, even in college football, that you consider if you're looking to go on the under as well. All right, before I get you out of here, obviously the key matchup of the week in college football, Michigan and Ohio State. Right now, the Wolverines at home, 3.5-point favorites against the Buckeyes. I have a sneaky suspicion that we will see the best of Ohio State this week. I know that there's this weird galvanizing force that Michigan seems to believe that they have, but I don't know. I think they're feeling themselves a little bit, and I think Ohio State's starting to pick things up a little bit. I haven't made a bet on this game yet just because I need to do a little bit more research, but I'm intrigued by Ohio State with a hook, and there's still a part of Michigan, especially if McCarthy isn't healthy, that has me intrigued to maybe fade them at this point. What about you?
No, I'm with you. I'm Ohio State all the way. I see them at 3.5 right now, and in my opinion, either of these teams can win the game. So you're going to give me 3.5 points with one of them. I'm going to take that every time. And you have to go back a while for Ohio State being a regular season underdog, but they have covered the spread in 9 consecutive games as underdogs, winning 7 straight outright. You have to go back a while, so those teams don't necessarily impact this one, but I think it does speak to the idea that when you have a powerhouse like the Buckeyes, they're usually going to cover the points because they can almost win every single regular season game that they are in. And I honestly thought that Michigan's shenanigans last week were flat out embarrassing, like balling on the field. what are you doing, man? Like there was so much emotions going into that game, apparently, that it feels like a classic letdown spot, even though it's the big game. So I was planning on taking whichever team you gave me the points with, and that I'm getting over the key number of 3 with a hook at 3.5 for Ohio State. Give me that all day.
All right. So there you go. You and I both on the same side for Ohio State and Michigan. Any college bets that I have missed from you? We got plenty to choose from, both for today and Saturday.
Well, I'm always a Kansas basketball guy. The one bet I didn't cover, though, it wasn't in college, if that's all right. But I'm all over Tyreek Hill today with the Dolphins. I think that Tyreek Hill is gonna. Yeah, I think Tyreek Hill is going to have a massive game for the Dolphins. You can get him at 78.5 receiving yards right now. And I know that the Jets have a good defense, but they let CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, and Stephon Diggs all get over 100 yards. So I'm taking an alternate line for Tyreek at plus 185 to get 100-plus yards. He's sitting at 5.5 catches at FanDuel, which is bananas to me. So I'm taking Tyreek overs today, and then I'm going to spend all that money on some Black Friday shopping.
There you go. I think I'm going to throw a little bit on Jalen Ramsey at 5-1 to get a pick.
I love it.
It's not Zach Wilson, but Tim Boyle, I think over the course of his career, 3 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Not much is going to change today for the Jets.
No, I agree. And the Dolphins have an opportunity to show that they can blow a team out and get some momentum heading in, even at 9.5-point favorites. I'm a fan of. The Jets season feels like it's toast. Zach Wilson was throwing in the white flag. So Dolphins roll today.
Yeah, and even if the Jets decide to play well defensively, I still like these are the types of spots for Miami where they really convey a whole lot of power and flex their muscles. They've been so good against bad teams all year. Maybe the Jets are able to cover. I can't find another scenario that they end up winning this game. Nick says he's a better QB than Tim Boyle.
Probably are.
Yeah, I would throw Nick Springer out there in the event and see, and might as well take my chances. Joe, you're the best, brother. It's always great to see you. Thank you so much for being on this live edition of Benny and the Bets. Make sure you guys are following Joe at I am Joe Summers. Read his work over at BetSided, at Fansided, at Casey Kingdom, and check out the Arrowhead Addict betting show for all of your different Chiefs bets, in addition to right here on Benny and the Bets. So for Stanford Joe, I am Ben. Big thanks to our producer, Nick Springer, and the rest of the KCSN crew. If you've not downloaded the KCSN app, make sure you guys go ahead and do so. Also, our thanks to our sponsor, PXG. May all of your best bets hit. We will do this again, hopefully soon. A fun edition of a live version of Benny and the Bets. We'll talk to you again. So long for now.